very warm welcome to the campaigner for justice and human rights, Jemima Khan.
Thank you. Morning, everyone. Thank you for coming here on a Saturday morning, and thank you to Stop the War Coalition for asking me, and specifically for not making me go after Tariq Ali or George Galloway. Who can follow George Galloway? So, as Andrew said, October this year, it'll be 10 years since we first invaded Afghanistan, and that'll make it the longest war in US history. And it's time for us to look at what we've achieved there and at what cost. So a few of the figures. We have 9,500 troops in Afghanistan presently. 307 British troops have died. An estimated 30,000 Afghan civilians have been killed. And over £13 billion of taxpayers' money has been spent so far on the war in Afghanistan. That's £4 billion set aside each year. Well, Andrew says 4.5. Our credibility and our reputation in the Muslim world couldn't be any lower than it is now. So in 2001, in the wake of 9/11, I think it was pretty clear to most people why we invaded Afghanistan. It was about retribution, US retribution for the attacks in 9/11. It was to root out those responsible. Regime change and overthrowing the Taliban was a byproduct. But in the decades since, it's the reasons why we're there have become more and more convoluted and unclear. And the problem is that it's impossible to measure success if we have no idea what success looks like. I mean, Osama bin Laden is dead, but Al-Qaeda is still alive and thriving, as is Osama's special brand of jihadism, and as is Al-Qaeda ideology. Al-Qaeda can operate anywhere now, not just in Afghanistan, but anywhere from Peshawar to Bradford. And meanwhile, every politician in the UK has a different definition of what victory in Afghanistan looks like. Gordon Brown told us that we were there to make London streets safer, and that was echoed by Defence Secretary Liam Fox, who said that we're there so that the British people don't feel threatened. Well, if that's the goal, we failed, because the war hasn't made London streets safer or the streets of New York any safer. In fact, it could be argued it's made them more dangerous. The toppling of the Taliban didn't prevent the 7/7 bombers, our homegrown terrorists, who cited the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq as their motivation. Neither did it prevent the Al-Qaeda attacks in Madrid in 2004 or the attempted attack in Times Square last year. More to the point though, there's never been a shred of evidence that suggests that the Taliban wanted or ever wanted to conquer Britain, any more, frankly, than Saddam Hussein did. The Taliban didn't have the capability, and arguably it didn't have the inclination. Since 2002, there hasn't been a single terrorist plot that can be traced back to Afghanistan. Development Secretary Andrew Mitchell gave another reason for why we're there. He said it was about nation building, about building a functioning state in Afghanistan. Well, again, if that's our goal, we've spectacularly failed. Karzai's government, according to Transparency International, is the second most corrupt government in the world. Opium production is up 150% and now accounts for 90% of the heroin on our streets today. Up 150% since the fall of the Taliban. And even if we invested in Afghanistan for 20 years, we'd be unlikely to ever get it even to the levels in terms of police and civil service and courts to the same level as neighbouring Pakistan. After 30 years of war, the infrastructure is non-existent. And, of course, the Taliban is now resurgent and effectively in control of 2/3 of the country. UK and US governments say that we'll withdraw by 2015, but they say that they will do that if Afghan forces are able to defend themselves. Well, that's a joke, because everyone knows that Karzai's government, the minute US NATO troops pull out, is gone. And he's got no remit outside, no authority outside of Kabul. I suspect the minute that NATO troops leave, he'll be house hunting in Marble Arch, trying to find a house next to his old friend and neighbour, President Musharraf. And if the situation in Afghanistan weren't bad enough, you've got the war spilling over into neighbouring nuclear-armed Pakistan, which has been badly destabilised and now has its own Taliban, which it never had before. Not so long ago, probably the worst you could say about Islamabad, which is where I lived in Pakistan for 10 years, but in Islamabad for 5. And probably the worst you could say about Islamabad is that it was a little bit dull. You know, it was kind of ideal family posting, kind of clean and green, but, you know, not the most fascinating place to live. And I went back there last year, and our house that we used to live in, 100 yards away, there'd been a suicide attack, 4 people had been killed. Going a mile down the road, and this is a diplomatic safe city, this is one of the safest cities in Pakistan. Going a mile down the road, you had to go through countless checkpoints manned by armed policemen. It's just unrecognisable, it's a completely different place now. And it's a place where politicians and journalists are gunned down for speaking the truth or trying to stand up for minorities. And as I said, before 2002, the Taliban didn't even exist in Pakistan, and suicide bombs were unheard of. Last year, on the other hand, 11,585 people were killed in Pakistan as a result of terrorist incidents. 11,585 people, and 80 of those were suicide attacks. Pakistan is one of America's only allies that it consistently bombs. And in return for the $1 billion it gets in military aid every year, Pakistan's leaders turn a blind eye. The WikiLeaks cables revealed how Prime Minister Gilani had said to the American ambassador, Patterson, yes, you can drone us and we'll make a bit of a fuss in the National Assembly, but then we'll ignore it, so just keep going, keep doing it. And because of that, there were 118 drone attacks on Pakistan's tribal areas last year alone. Incidentally, droning is now a verb in Pakistan. And because of the collateral damage, you have 500,000 tribals who are literally up in arms. These are armed people who are now, united, even though before they may have been disparate warring factions, united by foreign intervention. According to a Brookings Institute report entitled, rather charmingly, Do Targeted Killings Work? For every 1 militant killed by targeted strikes, 10 or so civilians die. 10 or so. There's a Middle Eastern proverb which goes, it's me and my brother against my cousin. It's me and my cousin against the foreigner. Even America's own ambassador, Ann Patterson, has admitted that drone attacks are counterproductive. The only beneficiary when a civilian is killed as a result is Al-Qaeda. I don't know about all of you, but when Obama was elected, I celebrated. I thought he was the antidote to the Bush era. I thought that he was a voice of sobriety and reason, and I was really excited. And he got a Nobel Peace Prize, and the anti-war president has approved military action in 5 countries: Pakistan, Afghanistan, Somalia, Yemen, now Libya. And after 72 hours of entering the White House, he'd used his option to drone Pakistan. In the 8 years of Bush, I can't believe I'm actually comparing I'm actually being favourable about Bush. 8 years of Bush, unmanned Predator drones were used in his 8 years 45 times, In Obama's first year, they were used 52 times. 53, actually. Last year, there were 118 drone attacks against Pakistan. 2,000 Pakistanis have been killed in drone attacks since Obama took office. And the other thing to question is that apparently Obama knew, or the American administration knew where Osama was hiding since last August. Sorry. So why, since last August, since they knew, have there been 52 drone attacks everywhere but Abbottabad, where Osama was hiding? US has asked for a 75% increase in funds to further enhance drone operations in Pakistan for this year. There comes a point when you have to ask, what's more dangerous, counter-terrorism or terrorism? And I think all of us here would agree that it's time to admit and that by any criteria, our Afghan mission is a big failure. And it's going to continue to be a failure. It's completely puerile to just keep insisting, faced with all the obvious facts, that we're winning. We're still winning. Last Thursday, there were two senior commanders, Major General Tim Evans and General David Rodriguez, who said via a satellite link, progress is being made. Taliban are being captured or killed. Local security forces are getting more stable and they're getting stronger, more professional. But then in the next breath said, but we should expect more violence than last year. It's the same story. And it's hard to avoid the conclusion that the real reason that we're there and we continue to throw money at this unwinnable war and continue to line the roads of Wootton Bassett is that no one dares answer, or no one wants to have to answer, the question, what was it all for? It's so politicians can just keep on saying they didn't die in vain. Thank you very much.